Welcome to this episode of the Note Closure Show. Today's episode, I want to get into a subject matter that I've had the conversation with with a couple of our coaching students, a couple of our WCN Crew monthly members. And the conversation is centered around buying performing notes that have some seasoning. They've been around for a while. Most of the stuff that we see is like 30-year mortgages that have been around for a couple of years. And it's not really the issue I'm going to talk about, really doesn't come into play a lot of times when you're buying non-performing, because on non-performing notes, you're buying them at a significant discount, usually off of the the unpaid principal balance or the legal balance. You're either going to foreclose or you're going to get it reinstated, but you're buying it at a significant discount that your yield based off of them reinstating is usually going to be a double-digit return, okay? And if you're getting double-digit return, if you're buying a significant discount, your money costs should be covered for a while, right? Because the idea is here to either A, buy, keep it performing for a couple of years, and then sell the note off to an IRA investor, somebody who wants an 8% return. While you're getting a 12 to 15, you can sell it at a price that makes sense for somebody to take over the entire note or get cashed out by your investor, and they're still making an above average return, and all is well. The caveat here is you're buying performing notes that are really beyond that 15-year mark. Because here's the thing, when you look at the payment history, the actual amortization table of a 30-year mortgage, the first couple of years, we all know 7, 8, the first really 10 years, it's mostly interest is being paid, very little principal. The principal is getting, that number is going down slow. It starts to pick up momentum. And where you have to be careful of is if you're going to be buying the tail end of that mortgage, the last 5, 10, 15 years of that mortgage payment. And what happens a lot of times, we think, oh, it's got a balance, a UP balance. If I buy this at 80 cents on the dollar, it's going to be a good yield to me. Yes, it can be a good yield to you. It can be a good yield to you, definitely. But what you got to be careful of is how you borrow that money. Because here's the thing. We have two kind of interest rates going. You've got your 30-year mortgage, if it's a performing note, that's getting bought down, right? P&I payment every month. But if you're borrowing money from an investor, most of us are buying at an interest only. Like we're borrowing $25K at 10% interest for the year. That's $2,500 a year. That's basically $210 a month, roughly $212 that we're paying in interest. But that principal of that $25,000 doesn't decrease because we like the cash flow. Well, the opposite, obvious thing is after a period of time, we're going to pay back our investor their $25K, right? So I was explaining this to a couple people, and they were just like, it just wasn't making sense. Oh, but the cash flow, the payments coming in from the borrower, great, they're covering what I'm paying my investor. And yes, they should definitely cover what you're paying your investor, but you have to be careful when that balance gets below or gets closer to that whatever you borrowed from your investor. That's your kind of window, like, hey, I need to sell this deal off or sell it, get cashed out by the investor and move on, or sell it as a performer, somebody who's buying it for their own portfolio, not using other people's money. And the easiest way to explain this is to literally bring up an amortization table and kind of walk you through the process. So if you're listening to this episode, I'm going to try to explain so you can hear it. I would highly recommend you check out the actual video. And that way you can see how we kind of break this thing down for you so that you understand the difference. Because it is numbers, and it can be a little taxing on the mind. Oh, that's the wrong tape. That's a new tape we just got in. I think this is it. Hang on here. Hang on a second. All right, let me pull this up here. That one. All right, so I've got the right tape I'm looking at. New share. All right, so this is what I've done. Okay, so what I did is to make it simple for you, I just ran an amortization table. I went in, you can do this online, mortgage amortization table. And what it is, a 30-year mortgage, a $100,000 mortgage at a 6% interest rate. Yes, I know rates are at 7.25, 7.5, but I just wanted to give you a flat 6% interest rate, kind of give you a bit of an idea. You could adjust the numbers as you want. Okay. Now, what we base this off of, you can see, and it started from this year, so it's a 30-year mortgage, so it ends in 2054. Of course, you can backtrack the numbers however you want to. Okay, backdate it. But I just want to give you a bit of an idea. So what we base this off of, okay, but the performing out at year one, let's just go here. So at year one, originates in April, first payment's made in May, okay? So if you're going to buy 80% of the unpaid balance in May, so the unpaid balance is 98,666. The borrower is paying basically $600 a month on this. All right, $599 is the payment, 105 of that is principal, 493 of that interest. So the principal's only going down by roughly $105 a month at the end of year one. So if you paid 80 cents on the dollar for this note, okay, originated note at 1 year of seasoning, you'd pay 78,933, right? Now, where do you get that money from? Now, if you are using your own money, great. You're probably making you're making a great return on that, right? But if you're borrowing money, you're going to borrow that 78,833, okay? You borrowed at 8% interest only to 78,000. It's $526.22 a month. You're only making about $73 a month difference, $73.33, right? Because that's what the P&I payment is, okay? All right. The 9%, if you borrowed money at 9%, you're actually only making $7.55, okay? 10% money is $6.80, you're losing money monthly. It doesn't make any sense for that. So that's why you got to be careful and understand. Obviously, this is at a 6%. There's not much difference between the interest rate and what you're paying. So the principal write down. Now, the great thing about this is the balance of the UPB takes a while to drop. So what do? We're going to take a look at our amortization table and see when it gets down to basically 79,000. So if you scroll down here, so we're basically May of 2025. That's 1 year. 78. When does it go? Where does it fall? Down here, December of 2035. Okay. The balance is at 79,885. Remember, if we go back up here, 79,855. So that's when the balance falls below. So basically, we need to be at $79,000. We go back up to here. Right. Yeah, 79,000 is right when it's from 2035 to when we buy this note? May. So basically, you'd have 10 years of interest payments if you had 8% money. So basically, 10 years, it's 120. Okay. I'm just going to do some rough math here. 10 years. So that's May, December. So that's 10 and a half years. Okay. So that's 126 payments. Times, remember, what's our difference? Well, really, the only one that makes sense is 8%, right? So that would be $73.33 times 73.33. So basically, you made $9,200, $9,239 by buying that mortgage and buying at 80% of UPB and paying 8% out, to the point where you're okay selling that note off at par to somebody else, or selling it back to your investor and letting them get their $79,000. So you made some cash flow along the way. Okay. 10 and a half years. All right. Now let's roll it down a little bit. Let's say you're going to look at buying this note that's been around for a little while. Let's say, so this is a 10-year mortgage, or it's 10 years into the 30 years. Okay. May 2034. Okay. Now the balance then on this one is 83,504. Okay, 83,504 is the balance. If you're going to buy this performing note at 80 cents on the dollar, that's 66,803.68. Okay, so it's just under $67,000. If you're going to be borrowing that money at just a flat 8% return, interest only, you're paying your investor $445.36 a month. You're making $154 roughly, $154.38 difference between what's coming in. 9%, you're making $98.52. At 10% money, you're only making $43 and some change, or $42.80. Okay. So here, the $445.36 minus the $599, that's where we came up with that $144.29 or 19 cents. Okay. Now let's see how long it takes for your balance to get paid down from 83,504 to right at 67,000. Okay, so we're here at May. I'm going to highlight that in red, and actually let's highlight that in yellow so it's a little bit easier to read. There we go. All right, so we're looking for $67,000. Keep going down here. There it is. 6775 is May 2040. And we bought this in May of 34. So you'd have 6 years, roughly exactly right at 6 years. Yeah, 6 years of making that difference before you got to pay your investor back their money or gets below that or turn it back into. So 6 years of the cash flow. That's not so bad. Okay, now let's say we bought it a different amount. Okay, so that was at 10 years. Let's go. Did we do the 20 year? I think we did the 20 year here. Yep, here we go. 20 years. All right. Remember, there's only 10 years left on the mortgage. Okay. So 10 years is only left. I mean, they've been paying on this thing for 20 years, but they still owe $54,000. Okay. So 80% of the 54,000 is 43,202 bucks. Okay. If you borrow that money at an 8% flat interest rate, you're basically paying $288.02 a month to your money partner. You're netting in $311.53, which is not bad, right? 311 bucks. That's a pretty good deal. That pays your electric, whatever. Okay. Even if you borrow that money at 10%, 43,000 at 10%, basically paying $360 in interest only at 10% to your investor on a monthly basis. You're still netting in 239 bucks and 53 cents. Okay. But look how fast this drops down. Because remember, now it's more principals being paid versus interest. So 43,202, this is as of April 2024. Highlight that. So where do we go to 43,202? Boom. Right down there, October of 2046. That is only 2-year difference. Okay. No, it's not even that. It's about 2 years and 5 months. About 2.5 years. So that's why you've got to be careful, ladies and gentlemen. If you start getting into 10 years or less, there's really only, I mean, obviously, if it's a lower interest rate and you have a higher interest rate, there's a difference in payments. You got to figure out that calculation. But this is why you should run your numbers and run an amortization table and match this up. Okay. Yes, this is in the future, but you can backdate this. Okay. So this actually didn't start in 2024. It started 24 years ago. So 2000. And running your numbers and backdating it to figure out how long you have. So if you get into where you're basically less than 5 years, okay, let's see here. So this last calculation, 5 years here. All right. And this was almost ideal because one of my investors was he's looking at a mortgage basically where 31,000 was the balance. Okay. 31,012, a performing note. Still remember, it's still making $599 a month payment. But 442 is going to principal. Okay. So he's going to offer just under, I think it was like 25. He's going to offer 20, just give or take a bit. But anyway, balance is 31,000, 80 cents on the dollar. That is 24.8. Okay. He's borrowing $24,809 at 8%. You're only going to pay $165 a month. And that cash flow looks good because the monthly P&I payment's $599. That's a nice chunk. That's $334.15. $334. That's not bad. But look how fast it gets to where that balance drops down to 24,809. Boom. From May 2050, you have basically a year of payments before the principal. Yeah, exactly. Actually, you have 11 months of payments before now the balance falls because the next, basically you've right at a year, 24,582. Yeah, 25,057 in May. So yeah, you basically have 1 year of collecting payments before you got to pay your investor back. It makes more sense on this one to sell the note to your investor. Maybe you have them pay you a $2,000 finder's fee and let him make a decent return on his money, a 7-8% or whatever it is for the life of the loan, versus you trying to squeeze that, because that gets pretty tight pretty fast. Okay. This is where it makes sense to find somebody who wants to make a 8% or 7% return or something like that in their money, they can buy these at 80, 85 cents on the dollar. It's a good deal for you. So that's why you got to be careful. When you start looking at notes, I prefer staying at 15 year, the first 15 years, not the bottom 15 years on the difference. Okay. But this is why you got to be careful. There was a tape that sold. People paid 80 cents on the dollar, 79 cents of the UPB is what I found out it sold at. Well, that was decent if they're newer term loans, but over half of them were 15 years or older. So hopefully they got cheap money. If they got cheap money, they're using their own funds, that's a different story, right? But if you're using other people's money, got to make damn sure that whatever you're paying your investor or what you borrow doesn't fall below the UPB, because that's pretty easy to get based on excited about the cash flow. But now if you owe more than what the actual unpaid balance is, you're going to be in a world of hurt. You're going to have to come out of pocket for money, and that's not a good place to be. Okay. So hopefully that was helpful. Just run an amortization table, look at where it's at. Obviously, if it's the thing to keep in mind too, ladies and gentlemen, is obviously if you're buying non-performing that is now reperforming, there's a period in there, 1, 2, 3, 4 years where they didn't make any payments, so that UPB didn't go down. So looking at then the legal balance, or looking at, adjusting the loan for what the original UPB is and figuring that out. Or if you're going to recast a loan and just add the face amount to the loan, then you're going to obviously extend the term of the loan. So if they haven't paid for 3 years, maybe extend it by 3 years and just adjust your amortization table. And that's why run the terms as best you can, and then look to find as close of a number in your amortization table as far as UPB where it's at. I usually go a little bit less, because there's going to be, if they make, $5 extra monthly payment, $100 extra monthly payment, it's going to adjust the balance to the loan. So hopefully that was helpful for you guys, but definitely make sure if you're buying notes that are performing, make sure you preferably buy them in the top half of the 30, because you'll have a longer period of time versus the bottom half where it's going to start getting crunched. Okay. You don't want to get crunched. Yes, the numbers look great. The cash look great. But when you start thinking like you're into it for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years, and that's about it, or less than that, that's where it can get kind of dicey. And we don't want you to be in a dicey area. All right. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. If you ever want me to walk you through one of those, feel free to book a call at talkwithscottcarson.com. I'm glad to kind of walk you through that. And hopefully that makes sense now that you've had the numbers to take a look at it. So go out, take some action, buddy, and we'll see you at the top.